for life.
Hi everybody, welcome to Anglers. Thank you for coming. I'm with Travis Long, Schooled Up Charter Fishing, and Steve Griffin, Griffin's Guide Service. And we're here to make a presentation for you and to help you catch more fish this year. Whether it's going to be striped bass, if you want to know how to catch bull reds, if you want to know how to catch cobia, black sea bass, flounder, bluefish, mackerel, we're here for you. And that's what we want to do. Now, the way the format's gonna be is I have we're gonna try to hold this to 1 hour, fellas, okay? So I'm gonna make the introductions. We'll get my piece going. Travis has a piece that he needs to talk about, and Steve's got another piece that he's gonna talk about, and then we're gonna jump into the questions that are in the clipboard over here, okay? Throughout this process, we're gonna be pulling some numbers out of a lottery system. We're going to be trying to give as many people a pack of GI jigs as we can, okay? So I'm going to kick things off, and I would like everyone here to meet each other because I think it's very important. As light tackle fishermen, being out on the water, I'm going to be next to you one day, and the next thing I know, I'm going to be next to your boat one day, and I won't know you. But you should introduce yourself and build your network that way, okay? Start meeting people here. That's why we're here. Everyone here is interested in catching fish. And, don't be that guy out there like, oh man, what are you doing? You cut me off or whatever. Be the guy out there saying, hey, what's up? And hey, you need some help? Like, yeah, man, I haven't caught anything. Throw him a lure, help each other out. That is what this is all about. Building your network, making friends on the water, being courteous, Used to be when I started out, everybody waved. Now today is like, wave again. That's what this is about, building the fishing community. Some of my best friends come from fishing communities. I meet them at tackle shops. I meet them on the water. I meet them at the boat ramp. I've got friends I meet on the boat ramp. You can jump on some guide trips with these guys and do walk-ons with them. I still have friends today that I talk to almost every week that I've met on a walk-on guide trip. There's a lot of value to doing those kind of things. So we're going to start out with Travis, and he's going to start with networking.
All right, thanks everybody. I thank you all for being here on one of the few days it's not windy. Almost all the days have been windy lately. Can you hear this too?
You've got to hold a little closer.
All right, so LJ asked me to talk about networking and just things that we've discovered over the years fishing. I found networking to be very important, but I feel that there's keys to a quality network, and a lot of that comes from time on the water. When I'm on the water, I'll just run into the same boat a few times, see the same people, and like LJ said, you start to develop a friendship, or you just notice, hey, every Tuesday or Friday when I go fishing, I'm noticing the same person out here. And you might stop and wave and say hi, and after the trip, they'll send you a message, and how was the day, how'd you do? You share a few notes, and kind of your network starts. The best networks to me have like a specific network of maybe 2 or 3 people that are the type of people that, you're not afraid to tell them that you caught fish like 5 minutes ago and come here right now. And that list is going to be very small. A mistake a lot of people make is they make that network very large of the people they call as soon as they catch a fish. And what'll happen is, if I'm in a network with these 2 guys, and they know that every time they tell me that they're on fish, get here right now, 10 boats show up, they're gonna be very hesitant calling me in. They're gonna wanna tell me, but they're gonna think, well, Travis shows up with 10 boats. So you really gotta think how many people you want to share that with, and you're going to get better information.
You're talking about instant knowledge, like this is going on right now, and it's, that bite's not going to last all day. It's going to last for like 20 minutes, or till that school moves out of there, they take off, right?
Yeah. So you want that group to be kind of small and intimate.
And you set those up before you leave the dock, right? Like you're pre-planning your trip. So you've already contacted those guys, and you know that you're going to work together to catch fish, right?
Yeah, and those are people that relationships develop usually naturally over time. The second thing that I think makes a good network is you have people that you share like specific information with. So you might have a larger group where there's a friend down in Point Lookout or the Rappahannock or north of the bridge that they'll tell you, hey, you know, the bite's starting to happen. You might start wanting to come out. Fish are hanging out to 20 or 30 feet. But they're not going to tell you exactly what X spot to go to, and you're not going to tell them that. But you're just sharing enough information to have a fishing day.
Well, the thing of it is, you know, yesterday's fish are yesterday's fish. They're not today's fish, but I get it, man. Hey, what about, you know, like I get guys call me all the time, Travis, and they say, hey, man, I'm going out next week, or I'm going out on Thursday. You know, what's happening out at Chesapeake Beach? I mean, so how do you work that?
Well, with that, I usually share that general information, and a great place, the best information is the information you share live on the water. And the main thing with the network is you're only going to get what you give. So if you're out fishing and you're the type of person who, if I call Steve and tell him, get here right now, I'm on fish, you know, but you know, he never calls me, eventually that network's gonna stop, right? And you're gonna be like, wait, this isn't working out. This is a one-way street. So you really want to make sure, that's why I say these networks evolve over time and on trust, and they're usually boiled down to, do you fish at the same time of this person? You know, one of my best networks is another guide who launches from the eastern shore on the same days I launch on the western shore, and it just naturally is a good relationship because we know that we're going to truthfully communicate with each other, and we're covering different water. So it just kind of helps out.
Now here you have it, because I know we got, anybody here from the Eastern Shore? Nobody? We're all from the Eastern, the Western Shore here today?
It's a good side.
You're from Eastern Shore.
The good side of
No?
the day, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, too bad we didn't make that network connection today. Hey, but the other thing is that, like, I don't have any problem. If somebody calls me up, I'm going to tell them what yesterday's fish were, Tuesday's fish. That's fine. But the only thing I ever ask from folks is, just let me know, even if it's a bad report. If I told you to go to 86 because I did good there 2 days ago, just send a text back and say, hey man, we crushed it, or it wasn't that good. We didn't catch anything over there. We found our fish over on Poplar, and that kind of thing. So feedback's always good. So let's pull a ticket.
All right.
We'll get going here because we're trying to keep it. We could talk for 8
All right. 241. That's the last three.
241.
241.
Oh, good job, brother. Thanks, man. Pull one more.
246. 246.
How about a pink premium? Half ounce.
That's a good one.
Thanks, man. Okay, so Steve Griffin's here from Griffin Sky Service, and he's going to be talking about patterns. So how do we go out? What do we do? Where do we go, Steve?
All right, so I'm here.
Hey, can I say one more thing? Can I brag about you?
Sure, go ahead.
All right.
I'll take it.
So you guys know that that rock the October, what is it called? Rock the Chalk Tank. So Steve didn't pre-fish that this year. He calls me up and he goes, hey, what's going on in the chalk tank? I'm like, hell, man. We tried, man, but you know, we're shallow water fish, but we only caught like one and we lost it out of the boat because my buddy tied a bad knot. You know, it was like a 30-inch fish. So Steve had no pre-fishing in that rock the chop tank. Goes out there, him and his crew, they, like, how many boats? 250? Like, they limited, right?
I think it was 150, about
150 boats. The guys go in there, they win it all. They walk out the door with everything, $30,000. And so what he's going to talk to you about is patterns. So take this information and everybody's going to get a nugget out of this one. So he didn't know where he was going, never fished a chop tank, goes in and spends all this money on the tournament, gets in all those little Calcuttas, and walks away with 30 grand, man. So go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about patterns because it's something I use every day when I go out to basically give my clients on the boat the best chance to catch fish. I use it as my main tool. And a great example is in that tournament, we did not have a chance to pre-fish. We usually like to pre-fish. When I'm running charters, I'm usually out on the water, so I know what's going on. But patterns and identifying a pattern is crucial to having a good day on the water. We didn't have a pattern going into that tournament, But within an hour, we had figured out sort of a pattern of what was going on. And what we did is we took that, was able to look at charts and find similar areas where we were finding the better schools of fish. And we just went and tried new areas. You know, instead of running around blindly, just casting at good fishing spots, we went and tried areas that looked like they would be more productive. And it paid off.
How do you find those?
Use charts. So, so in that pattern, you know, we're in shallow water, deep water. If you're on ledges, there's plenty of patterns you'll see where fish are holding, and if they're holding there.
So you pop a couple of fish in a certain type of terrain, so to speak, in a certain type of a bottom.
Sure.
And you pull out your navionics, so you just look at your, you got a Simrad, I think, right?
Garmin, I've got Garmin on
Garmin,
the boat.
okay.
But yeah, we use navionics. I pull out my phone, look at navionics, or even satellite imagery if you're in shallow water. And what you could do is pinpoint areas that have similar features or similar depths, similar water. If it's clean water, you got wind coming in from the north, you can find those areas that are going to have clean water and just work from one to another instead of just driving around looking for.
Gotcha. There you go. So once you locate fish on a certain pattern, you just keep looking for that pattern throughout the day. Now, what about following the tide? Anything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So patterns can be many things. We've got weather conditions. You could have water conditions, clean water, tides. Tides is a big thing. So
right. So here's the nugget for folks. So for 10 miles, you get 1 hour of tide. So if you know you need that moving tide, that's how you follow the tide. 10 miles, think 10 miles. So if you're not going to run 10 miles, then you're not going to follow the tide. But that's fine, but that's a little nugget there to follow the tides on.
Tides are a big thing we like to use as far as pattern. If we notice fish are biting on the last hour of a falling tide, I'm going to follow that tide out and try and stay on that part of a wave, because the tide is a wave going out of the bay or coming in. So that's a pattern right there. We've got all kinds of other patterns. If they're in shallow, if they're on ledges, they could be in rivers, they could be on river mouths, out in the main stem of the bay. All that's patterns that you can put together.
Right. Perfect. Hey, so why don't we jump into another raffle? What's that number, brother?
259.
259. We got a 1/4 ounce sand deal right here, brother. Let's do one more.
That's a great color.
That's my favorite.
247.
247.
Yo.
Ooh, another rain minnow. Hot pink. That's my favorite color also. All right, let's jump. Hey, look, I use basically a handful of colors. I like the pink lady. I like the sand deal. I like the hot pink and rain minnow. The sand deal rain minnow sometimes just nails it.
So I'm going to talk about real quick about an example of a pattern that we noticed last year. We were out in the summertime fishing for bull reds, and that was our target species, but we've got all kinds of other stuff that we're fishing for: rockfish, mackerel, bluefish. And we were out at 10 o'clock. It went off. I mean, we had fish jumping out of the water. Everybody's hooked up. We got bull reds. 3 people on the boat hooked up to bull reds. It lasted for about an hour, and it was a great day. So we went back to that same spot the next day. That was at 10 o'clock. The next day, 11 o'clock, it went off. So what do we know about tides? You know, every day they're about an hour later, right?
Yep.
So starting to think here, we've got a tide-related pattern, right? These fish, it happened to be the last hour of the outgoing tide. Day 3, we went back to that same spot. What time do you think we went back?
An hour later.
An hour later, and it happened. So there's your pattern. I mean, it could be something that small as just
even if you're fishing shoreline. It could be the same thing.
Absolutely.
If you got some favorite riprap that you like to fish, notice what time of the tide that it is that you caught those fish on, and then try to return on that same tide the next time that you're there, right?
Yeah, patterns. I mean,
so I got a question here from Ron C. So, Steve, can you give Ron C, where you at? Here you go, bro. Give him a surprise. So Ron's question is, when jigging, what is Travis, I'm gonna you fire this one up. When jigging, what is the preferred presentation, depth, retrieval speed, or motion that you like to use when you're jigging? Because here's one thing about Travis: when he's in my boat, if he ain't catching fish, we're moving because they ain't there.
All right, so I'm trying to remember all the intricacies of that question, but depth would for me would be depending on the depth of the fish.
How about this spring, like next month, when you get jump out there for some striped bass?
Well,
what would be your preferred depth
for
jigging?
For jigging like open water, I'd probably be around 30-ish feet, depending on what the patterns have been prevailing during that time. Sometimes the fish are a bit higher, or they could even be suspended. So it'd be depending on where they are in the water column. If they were towards the bottom, I would be more likely to want to use, in the area where I fish, 3/4 to a 1 ounce jig head. But you really want the jig head. Most people know this. It's gonna hold bottom, like the lightest that'll get to the bottom. And I would probably use like a jerk shad. I don't know if there's one over there, but we pretty much, I think we know what jerk shads look like.
Oh yeah, we didn't bring the rods out.
Well, they're behind us. And Steve can show that one. But if they were up high, which many times they are in the springtime, I would really, for my jigging, I would really use a paddle tail. I think we have one of those too, the hot chartreuse. Diesel minnow has been my go-to, and you can jig it on the bottom too, but you can also kind of move your rod up. And if you have a very sensitive rod, I like to use the JLS rods. I'm not trying to like plug one rod over another, but it's just what we use. We find they're
what is that, 6'8", medium, extra fast, right?
So what I would do,
That's a 6'3".
if I know they're suspended, I would let this drop down to what I would think is 20 feet. I would jig the rod. Maybe even you can do it. You know what I'm going to say.
What kind of motion do you?
I would jig it about twice and let it fall. And on the fall, I would keep contact with I would keep my line tight. And if I felt anything like my lure disappear, I would set the hook. Yeah, hook sets are free. The worst thing you did is jig. And then I would reel 2 or 3 times, do the same thing. Reel 2 or 3 times, do the same thing, and work that through the column until I kind of figured out where they're striking at, and they're going to hit on the fall. So you're going to feel that lure kind of drop and nothing, and set the hook. So you'll see on your finder whether you see the fish on the bottom or suspended. But in the early spring, some of our biggest fish have been like 5 to 10 feet down. So even in those times, I would cast really far away from the boat with a lure like that, with maybe a 1/2 ounce. And I would let it just kind of fall and wait for that strike, and then jig it back to the boat. So I could cast as far away as I could from the boat, let it go out for about 4 seconds, flip the bail, and let that lure kind of fall through the column, and then jig it, and then repeat or drop it. So I know that was a long answer, but I don't know if I answered what you wanted, but that was like, I felt like there was a lot of stuff in that question.
Is my mic okay? My mic's worked, so. All right,
That was a good question. That was detailed.
we have Russ. This is for Steve. What color and what weight? And brother. So that's my favorite color right now for May. So that is a good color and a good weight for May. And look what you pulled.
All right, Russ. It's a great question. To me, there's no right or wrong answer. I picked 2 that I'm probably going to throw first on my boat. And the chartreuse Z-Man is a great color. And I usually start with that. It works in several conditions. And I like to use that for rockfish. The glow GI jig is also a secret weapon.
Anglers has those now and again on special occasions. They're very difficult.
If Anglers has those in, you need to come here and get them. And then if I'm going after bulls, I'm probably going to throw this, say, Pearl Blue Glimmer. And that GI right there, that color.
7-inch with 1.5 ounce jiggers, just like you have, brother. Right there, that will catch you a bull or a cobia. Just put one of these 7-inch diesels on there, the paddle tail, and you're gonna be catching fish.
So if I'm going to use those are my favorite colors, but there's a different color for every situation and a different weight for every situation. Weights are all going to be based on currents and what you need in patterns. If the fish are on the bottom and you've got a heavy current, you're going to have to up your weight a little bit to be able to keep in contact with the bottom and keep your line tight. You don't want to have a lot of road in your line. when you're jigging, or you won't feel anything.
Hey, so let's throw another one at Travis. How about that?
Let's do it.
Okay, Ravi, where you at, brother? Ravi. Okay, so where to fish and what type of season? So let's boil that season down to summer. You're gonna go out in the summer, this summer, okay? And I'm gonna throw a month at you. I'm gonna call it July. And you're gonna fish out of Chesapeake Beach.
All right.
What are you gonna do?
So in July, if I'm fishing out of Chesapeake Beach, I'm probably not targeting rockfish at all at that point. I would pick them up as a secondary species. If I'll add this caveat. If I was going out early in the morning or the evening, I would consider topwater spots and shallow water. But other than that, my focus would be on Spanish mackerel, bluefish, and even speckled trout and bull red drums, and possibly now we're starting to get a puppy drum. And I would go out and I would have a rain minnow on, and I would also have a paddle tail, like we had earlier with the lightweight. And I would mostly cast the rain minnows and go for the mackerel and go for the bluefish. I will tell you, if you get in an area around a high concentration of bluefish, you're going to have a higher likelihood of encountering the red drum. So I would also have one of the rods like Steve showed earlier that had that big giant diesel minnow, and I would make sure I had one rod on my boat that had a medium heavy, a 4,000 reel, and 30-pound braid, because what's going to happen, and Steve will probably tell you the same thing, you're going to encounter a bull red most likely the first time when you're not targeting it. And if you do not have that rod or reel with that gear, it's going to be the story of the fish that got away. And what I find often is equipment matters, and a 4,000 reel with 30-pound braid is still going to catch a Spanish mackerel and still going to catch bluefish. And that higher speed of retrieve is going to help you, all right? But it's also going to land that bull drum. So I would consider, I know this is going off the question a little bit, but I would, if you're going to go in the area, the Chesapeake Beach area, like LJ said, I would definitely have rods that can handle, because you may encounter them. They were even called off Poplar Island this year. If I wanted to target rockfish, I would pretty much consider I would have to be above the bridge, because they get stuck around the bridge pilings and they get stuck on bars like Hodges Bar, because that's the only place where there's oxygen where they can be. And a quick tip on that is the Maryland Fishing Report. Anglers has a great report. I would watch that. I watch Anglers and I watch the Maryland Fishing Report. But the Maryland Fishing Report will tell you the oxygen level where rockfish can survive. And that time of year, it really whittles it down that rockfish can only be in very small areas. And it's almost like a secret clue of, if I go to this spot, that's where they're going to be, because they have to breathe.
That's really good advice, Travis. I mean, that's free information on our website. They put that stuff out there for us, so it's really good. Okay, we're going to jump into the next question. Spencer, bull reds. We're going to throw this at Steve. We're going to give him this one right here, brother. He says, bull reds.
Thank you.
What patterns do you look for, and how do you stay on them in the summer?
So, it's a great question. My wife will tell you that I'm obsessed with these fish. So, patterns, different areas, you're going to see different things. If you go further south, they're going to act a whole lot different than they do up this way. But typically, let's say up this way, where I focus on them the most.
The Middle Bay, right? We're talking what?
Tangier
up, or we're talking?
Let's say Maryland waters.
Just Maryland waters. Okay.
Yeah, let's say Maryland waters.
All right.
So if you're in Maryland, what I see a lot is they're a little more spread out, and you're going to find them mixed in and mingled with other fish. Obviously, every day there's a different pattern. You kind of got to stay on those and just see what those fish are doing. One pattern I do notice works a lot is if you're in bluefish, there's probably bull reds around. We see it all the time. Now, knowing what to do when you're in bluefish to leave those bluefish alone and catch the bull reds that are down there or up on top, that's something you're going to have to get a pattern with. And you'll notice you can jig on the bottom, you can throw some on top water, we catch them on top water too. So
now last year those bulls, they didn't act like they did the year before. Because the year before, 2 years ago, the bulls were in massive schools up here. Yeah. They were around the target ship quite a bit. They were up at the mouth of the Patuxent. They even came up in the Parker's area. But last year we didn't have that. Those big schools of bulls, they stayed south. They stayed in the Virginia waters around Tangier, maybe even south of Tangier, down to Cape Charles. They didn't really come up here like they normally do, but we had bulls up here.
Absolutely.
So did you do something differently last year than the year before because of that pattern?
So when they're not really thick, I like to get out there and make a little bit of noise. Go to where the action is, make a little bit of noise, and those bulls, they're listening, they're going to go to where that action is because they're eating bluefish, they're eating the smaller fish or whatever those fish are working on. You'll find them on schools of bunker. Even though that school is just sitting there on the top of the water, you don't know what's
around,
underneath.
right?
You don't
They're
know
hanging around. They might not be on that school. Go to a different one.
And you might, you might not see breaking fish, but there's bulls down there.
So to tie Travis and Steve together, I'll give you an example. Sharks Island Flats last year, we're out there. We got breakers, Spanish mackerel or skying. You know, we're picking a few off here and there. And next thing I know, in comes on a rainbow a little bluefish, and I said, "Oh yeah!" And so I did exactly what Travis said. I had an 1.5 ounce GI jig, and I was using a 7-inch streak Z. Not that day is just what I wanted to use. So, you know, you can use that paddle tail for the bulls if you want, but those 7-inch streak Z's work too. And
the bulls will eat anything. If you get in front of their face,
they're going to take it. Yeah. So here's how one of the biggest bulls came in my boat last year. Sharks Island Flats. Next thing you know, I see a little bluefish coming over. Like, oh yeah. And so I'm saying about an hour. Everybody else is catching fish. I'm not catching nothing, right? But I still throw that jig out there, the 1.5 ounce, 12 feet of water, because it's the flats, right? And I just jig it back to the boat. Past after cast. You might have think I was musky fishing, right? And then next thing I know, my buddy, different Steve, he goes, "Hey man, can you help me with this rockfish? I can't get the hook out of his mouth," right? And I said, "Yeah man, no problem." So I bring my lure up, and I feel the bottom, and I raise it up about a foot or two, and I put it in rod hole. And of course it's scented with Procure, Super Jig. And here I am, I walk over here to my buddy Steve, I grab his rockfish, takes me about a second to get the hook out because he had a rain minnow and it's got a single hook on it. Just before I dropped it in the water, that rod goes. I said, "That's yours, brother." And so he brought in like a 42-inch bull right there. So those reds are up here. So don't ignore the fact, like Steve said, when you see that first little bluefish. Hey Travis, do bulls eat Spanish mackerel?
Yeah, they do. They circle them up. We were out one time and the mackerel were flying, 2 feet in the air. So they're equal opportunity eater. It's just like Steve said, they're going to eat everything, and there's a lot of good lure makers on the bay, and we're not going to try to tell anyone that they would need to have, one lure. But I can tell you the reason why I like the diesel minnows, and me and Steve kind of figured that out, the large ones. If they're away from the boat, you can cast them out and you can retrieve them when they're up high and they swim and the bulls will come up and you can almost sight cast for them. But when the lure's on the bottom, it floats, so it sits there and it's floating on the bottom, not laying down, and it's easy for them to eat it. And then the bluefish that we're talking about don't rip it off. Many times if I'm using another plastic or a metal, the hook's not strong enough on the metals a lot of times. But on the other plastics, everyone else hooked up with a bull, and the one guy reels in his line, and he just has a jig head with a bit off bait, and missed maybe the one opportunity for the day. So that's why I like to use the Z-Man, because they're not going to get ripped off. I don't want to be the one switching my lure when everyone else is hooked up. So for that instance, I like to use the Z-Mans. You might have one.
We're in some toothy critter territory, right, Travis?
Yeah. In the summer, you're going to have toothy critters. And another great thing about the paddle tail when you're going after bulls is we've had people, they're all over the place. We've had people catching them on top water while people are catching them on the bottom, bouncing the bottom. So with the paddle tail, you can do both. You can rip it across the top. You get plenty of bites that way. Or you can drop it down bottom and pound the bottom. And those bowls are just, they're foraging, man. They're all over the place. If you got bait, you've got breaking fish, they're in there. And that's why a lot of people just get lucky and randomly catch them. But that's why I bring my gear up so we can bring them in.
Read your number, Travis.
261. 261.
261. 261. All right, pull number, Travis. Oh, got it?
I got 260.
260. 260 still here, 260?
Nope.
Okay. What do we got? 243.
Man, you're so lucky.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the next question. Ron F. Are you still here?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So Ron, he asked about the bulls, but we're going to stick to the cobia this time. Okay? So for cobia, Travis, I'm going to let you start this off. What types of locations and depths should he look for when targeting cobia in the summertime? Hey, and can you throw in another nugget for him too? Tell him what monster you like the best also.
I like starting right around Father's Day weekend. Of course, you have to wait till when the season's open to target them, but from there all the way until about, I would say, when school starts again for the kids, that first or second week, a little bit into September. So what happens with the cobia in our area, they come here for one reason. They come here to spawn. And they usually, you know, the further you go south towards... So the further you go south towards...
Caitlin will fix it, don't worry.
Yeah.
Probably came unplugged.
I'll use my TV voice. So the further that you go south towards the CBBG down in Cape Charles, or the Rappahannock, your favorite spot, you're gonna, especially Cotterman, you're gonna find
Spot burner.
You're gonna find more cobia. But what I find is, even though there's more cobia, they're harassed a lot more. They're thrown at more. They're very hard. You know, there's more pressure, right? So throughout the years, and I think also it's just become more popular with rockfish season being closed. More people are starting to target cobia. And if you talk to the old timers, they're going to tell you they've been down by the target ship with Point Lookout for a long time. But we're getting more of them each year because the bay, for whatever reason, has been warmer. What I look for is if I'm looking for them up top, like if you're talking about sight fishing, and that's not really my main thing, but if you're looking for that, it's around channels or off on like feeding flats.
How deep?
Well, it depends. I mean, channel edges or around buoys are a good spot. And then if I'm chunking, if I'm chunking for them, I'm looking more at like points where tide's gonna move in like 20-ish foot of water. All right. Now, one important thing about cobia, if you find an area where there's bait, there's bunker, there's rays, there's sea turtles, there's life, that's going to be a high probability place where you're going to find cobia. The easiest place to probably go and, you know, try for cobia is out around the target ship area. You're going to see everyone out there, and you can chunk for them, or you can troll hoses with inline planers.
What size? What color?
You can use number 1, number 2, and number 3. For the trolling, I've used number 1 and number 2. And I like to use different color hoses unless I'd established a pattern. And usually it's orange and pink would be my go-tos. But I like small and large. I mix it up until I know, but a big one doesn't ever hurt. But like this year, me and you were on a trip, and we were out exactly where I'm telling you. We were out on Point Lookout, and I know I love the light tackle fish. That's my main thing. But it was 98 degrees with 0 wind, and we were really perfectly flat day. We were really ready to die, and we already caught Spanish mackerel, we already caught bluefish, and we were like, let's just throw these hoses overboard and run at like 5 miles an hour for 15 minutes while we eat lunch and like get some breeze on the boat, because it was horrible. I would die for wind at that point. And we put the hoses out, and it wasn't 5 minutes, like 48-inch cobia, another 5 minutes, like a 50-inch cobia. And it was quick and it was fun. Now, had we jigged for them on the bottom, we probably would have caught them. If we were chunking for them, we probably would have caught them there. And if I had a tower, or you can try to stand on the bow, but it's really hard, we probably could have saw some and threw lures at them. So it really comes down to your preferred method. But if you're gonna chunk for them, you really wanna look at points. So like any place where there's a point, and the further south you can go, the better. You can catch them in the Solomon's area, but we've hooked them further north, but I wouldn't exactly say that would be a smart place to target. So I would say Solomon's and south, and usually the further south you go, the more you're gonna get. But if you can target areas where there's not a lot of pressure, that can help too. So I don't know, do you have anything more specific you wanted to know on that? Or? Yeah, okay.
How about if you go down to Norfolk?
Well, down there, a lot of guys will go to Latimer Shoals and places like that and chunk, or they'll work the bridge pilings. A lot of people down there don't really troll the hoses yet. And if they did, they probably catch a lot of them. But it's just, timing that too, because when they're spawning, they really don't want to bite if you get the pre-spawn. But I will give you one more tip. If you're going to cobia chunk specifically, I found that if you get, when you have the tidal movement, when it's slack tide and the tide ended and the tide started, that little magic window for me is always the hour right before slack tide and the hour after. If you catch a tide change, and a lot of times, for whatever reason, early morning's been beneficial. So any point that you can go to would be ideal. Or out on a flat where it's a bumpy bottom, 18 to 22 feet, that would be a good bet. Personally, on a side note, I don't use chum. I find that chum just attracts rays and sharks, and the cobia are going to come through anyways. And you really, if you're going to chunk, you got to have fresh bunker. You want, the eyes to be clear and preferably not frozen. If you have a source that you can get it fresh, that's the key. Usually the stuff I get here is
I've used
great.
angler stuff plenty of times. They'll tell you if they got fresh bait or not.
You can mix in eel, or you can mix in eels.
Yeah, I like to throw one eel, and the rest are menhaden. So every 15 minutes, I switch out all my baits. All those chunks come off those hooks, and they all get reset. And then, so you set up a timer. Now, is it possible if I don't have a cobia tower, okay, and I don't have trolling rods with me, can I use my side scan to catch fish or to find cobia? And what would they look like?
Yeah. Absolutely. You could use side scan. A lot of people use the tower. I use the tower quite a bit. But you will see fish on side scan. You might just see one or two if you've got your side scan dialed in. And side scan is going to tell you how far away from the boat it is. So you can cast out about that far. It's just going to be a small sliver. That's going to be just a different, whatever the fish look like on your screen. That's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I see a rice seed,
piece of rice
seed on that screen.
Yep.
And then, so on my side scan, I'm sure you
You have Garmin and I've got Simrad. So I always have mine ticked out to 180 feet on both sides, right? And then every so many feet, like 50 feet, you see that mark. How do you know how far 50 feet is from where you are right now in the boat?
50 feet.
50 feet over there, I see a rice seed. How do I know how far that is?
Red umbrella.
So when you see it come up on side scan, you know it's behind you. So if it's 50 feet over there, you've got the depth plus 50 feet. If you're at 50 feet, your depth's 20 feet. You're going to throw it about 30 feet to the back because your sonar is all going to be history, right? So if you run over fish, there you go.
This is the classic. So basically, your transducer's back here in your center console.
Yep.
My transducer's probably 3-4 feet behind me when I'm standing at the console. So you got to keep in your mind that this is my side scan way back here and it's looking out. So when I see it on my screen, that fish isn't there. That fish was marked over there. So what I do is 50 feet. My boat's 25 feet. It's 23 Parker, but it's close to 25 feet. It's close enough. I look at how long my boat is times 2. That's how far out I need to go to that side. I saw it on the starboard, so I'm going to cast to the starboard. So when I see that, 2 lengths of my boat, I've got to go farther than that. And what I always tell people in my boat is, when you go to the starboard corner, this is the corner of my boat right now, and I'm standing in it, you're going to throw a 45-degree angle out there at least 60 feet. And let that thing fall. Let it fall. Cobia, if you're going to catch them on a jig, they're normally going to be close to the bottom. Okay? Let it free fall. If you're at 20 feet, let it free fall for the 20 feet. Tighten up your slack and just start ticking it. And it doesn't take a heavy action. You're just ticking it like this. And it's almost like you're bottom fishing. Because you're feeling that the weight of that 1.5 ounces. That's why you're using an 1.5 ounce. You want it down now. Throw it down there, lift it up, let it fall, just like you're bottom fishing, and work it all the way back to the boat. That fish might not pick it up where you marked him. He might have actually came closer to you. Cobia are curious creatures. They always are interested in boats, believe it or not. They're going to look for that, and they'll work back in, and you'll catch your fish that way. If you're marking, understand where your transducer is, understand how far 50 feet or 60 feet is with the length of your boat, 45 degree on that side of the boat.
And another thing to keep in mind is how fast your boat's moving. Because obviously if you mark fish right now, they're on the side of your boat. If you're going 7 miles an hour, they're going to be way back there. 7 miles an hour is faster than you really think. You cover a lot of ground. So
LJ, you gave me a number to call. I never got a chance. So it's 242, and LJ, you wanted to keep on time. It's probably about 5 minutes or so left, I think.
Okay, hold on. 242? Right on.
251.
251? 251?
You guys are good for
just
like
called
8,
242.
10 more minutes. Like 8, 10 more minutes. You're good.
Okay, good.
All right, 239.
Again? Congratulations. Okay,
Next one.
all right. Hey, I kind of like this one here. Mike, are you still here? Yeah. Right on, brother. Hey, can you grab him a prize? Okay, Travis, mono versus braid. What color? What do you use on your rods? Do you use different mono, different braid? Do you use leader? Can you talk about, now you've discussed catching Spanish mackerel, you've discussed catching rockfish, you've discussed catching bulls and cobia. Can you talk about mono versus braid for those species for us?
All right. Well, I'll focus on rockfish. So, I would prefer to use braid for almost everything. People who are topwater fanatics will tell you that there's a place for mono, because it floats and you have a little bit of more time. It gives a little bit. So when that fish strikes, if you're like me, I have a tendency to be a quick draw from jigging so much that I'll set the hook sometimes too early when I'm doing topwater. I have to make sure I have a moderate rod to stop myself from doing it, because I usually throw braid because I just don't want to have an extra rod with mono on the boat just for only topwater. But I'll use for rockfish jigging and open water, my preferred line will be 10-pound line, 10-pound braid. And I've caught rockfish up to 50 inches on it, no problem. I've anchored my boat on 10-pound braid in the current and couldn't get it to break. It'll hold up. If I'm around a lot of abrasion, a lot of rocks, I think my line's going to get cut off. And this is for jigging and light tackle and active casting. 15 pounds is the highest braid that I would consider using for rockfish. I know a lot of people use 20 or 30, but that's because they're live lining and that line's laying on the bottom sometimes and things like that. So I'll use 10-pound for jigging or 15, and I bet all those are 10 or 15. If I'm starting to go up to Spanish mackerel or bluefish, I usually use 30-pound braid. I do not need it for breaking, but I find it holds up longer to abrasion. And when I encounter that bull red drum, I don't have to worry about I'm fighting it with a 10-pound braid. And I'm a big fan of, we talk a lot about light tackle, and I know I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but I really believe more in adequate tackle. You don't need to fight a 50-inch rockfish while you have a lure on with a big giant trolling rod from a boat that's not moving. You're going to get it in real quick. These have 22-pound drag. It's not an issue. You don't need a giant rod for that because the boat's not moving. But you also don't need to target 40-inch rockfish on a perch rod and stress them out, because we want to, we're probably releasing them if they're large, and we want them to survive the fight and all that. So adequate tackle's big, and you want to have that line that's not going to break on you. So to recap, I'd use 10-pound to 15-pound on rockfish, and probably 30-pound on everything else unless I'm bait fishing. But I think your question was more light tackle, right? Or okay. And I and I wouldn't use mono for anything, really, except topwater. It just gives too much, and you can't feel. If you switch to braid, it's like the sensitivity is life-changing. Leaders, I always use a fluorocarbon leader. If you want to be cheap, and I do it, I'm cheap myself sometimes, you can buy fluorocarbon line, like the line that people use for live lining, and use that as a leader over mono. I find that's a step above, and you'll save a lot of money that way. When I'm targeting rockfish, I use a 30-pound leader. I know some people use 25, but I use 30. When I'm going for blues, max, and drum, I'll use 50 to 60 pound, unless I find the mackerel sometimes are leader shy because they're sight feeders, and the water's clear, they can see really good, and sometimes I'll drop down to a 40-pound leader, and actually my catch rate will go up some. So 30-pound for rockfish for me, 50 to 60 for reds, cobias, and max, unless I'm noticing I'm mostly targeting max and it's not really working well, I'll drop down to 40. And that way you're not switching lines all the time. So hopefully that was it, but you want to add something?
So there's like no one size fits all. I think of 15 and a 30. 30 if you're going after cobia or bull reds. That's a great size. And 15, strong enough if you catch something big, you're not going to have to worry about it, but also light enough that it's not going to take a lot of current. It's not going to get a big bow when you're jigging. You don't want that. But what you can do is adjust your leader size for the day. If you're fishing in structure on rocks, you're fishing docks, something you might get hung up on, you might want to throw a little bit heavier leader on. If you're just out in open water, you could probably go lighter. You might get a couple more bites. Who knows? But you can adjust leader size and go from there.
So let's do one more question. Is John still here? Okay, John. Okay, brother. So John, he wants to know. I'm going to paraphrase your question. Okay. So Travis, you're going to go out to Sharps Island Flat tomorrow, and you're going to catch a Spanish mackerel because you know they're out there. What technique, what lure, what rod are you going to use to catch those mackerel?
All right. Well, first off, they're not there right now. But if I was going out there, I would want to have a probably 6 to 7 foot rod for Spanish mackerel, because I like to get a longer cast away from the boat. Many times it's obvious mackerel are around. You're going to see them skying out of the water. But sometimes if you stop the boat and you're quiet, you'll see some rain minnows starting to move on the water. You'll see what looks like the videos, when the tuna start to thrash. They don't jump. Sometimes the mackerel just kind of thrash and make a little wake, and you'll see them chasing. And what I'll do is, it's really fun. You lead them. So I would make a really long cast, tip the rod. You might be able to show them how we do it too. So I really call it manual trolling at some level. You can jig for them, but it's mostly, Steve's gonna cast as far as he can, and then he's gonna aim the rod down. Tip down, and then you're really just gonna reel as fast as you can. Now, you wanna moderate, just crank as fast as you can, and then what happens is that mackerel's gonna hit. And when it hits, it's gonna be really strong, and it's gonna spook you. The biggest mistake people make is they get the hit and they don't land the fish. You just want to keep reeling. And when you keep reeling and don't react, it sets the hook. Now once you set the hook, it's a whole nother thing landing them, because they just go crazy, and when they get to the boat. But I would have, like I said before, 30-pound braid, not because I think I need it to land the weight of the fish, but because there's other toothy critters chipping at my line. There could be a bull red in the mix. I would have my drag pretty tight, so it's a little bit hard to pull, because when they strike, I want the hook to be set. You know, I don't want it to bounce out of their mouth. An interesting thing that we found with last year with the mackerel, and it could be different next year, but it was a pattern. They were biting on smaller size rain minnows where we were at, and we started to add teasers to it. I know Coach did the same thing. He sells them here too. And we added the flies to our line, and LJ even came out with a smaller rain minnow I'm pretty excited about. But we cast those minnows, and essentially you're tossing as far away from the boat unless you see one jump. If you see one jump, you can lead it and hook up, and it's a lot of fun. And Spanish mackerel are delicious. You can make ceviche out of them and everything else. But if I went to Sharp's Island, I would work around. I try to get outside of a trolling fleet, and I would look for mackerel skying, or if I saw rain minnows, I make a few casts and I move. It's just kind of like miniature tuna fishing. You got to work the grounds, look for life, look for a seagull sitting on the water, a few bait, make a few casts, move around. You want to add anything? Or?
I mean, we're talking patterns on all these fish, and they're all pretty much the same when you go out looking for them. So I hear Travis saying you're looking for life. It's the same thing with cobia. You go out, you're looking for cobia, they're going to be around the life. Rockfish, they're going to be around the bait. Anything, bull drum, they're going to be around life. So that's really what you need to go out and look for. And the technique Travis just put out will catch you the max real well. I got one more ticket. 272. 273. There you go. And 258.
Okay, 258?
Nope. 257. Yep.
Last call, 245. Oh, 257?
272?
No, 257. We got a 245. We got a lot of tickets.
274. 263.
Is that you again? Good job, bro.
Going out the wrong thing.
Okay. All right. One more. Last call. Oh, 63. Here you go. There you go. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. We would like to thank Anglers for having us today, and we really appreciate you guys putting up with this hot sun out here. Thankfully, it finally came out. Anglers is carrying JLS rods. We really like those rods. Also, Anglers is going to have a rain minnow rod coming out. I've been working with JLS, so that's in the near future here, and they're specifically for those paddle tails, those rain minnows, and it's got a different action to it that's really good. So there's more to come on that. So thank you everyone for being here. If you got any questions, we're here all day long. Just come out and talk to us. Thank you very much.
I want to add one more thing about Anglers is when I was talking patterns, they have a great fishing report every week, and when you look at that, you can really pick up some patterns on what those guys know. Sometimes I don't know how they know what they know, but they do. And Anglers has great stuff in the store. If I need something, everything I use on the boat basically sold here. So,
all right, thanks everybody.
Thank you guys.